Alright, welcome back to another new Eridu Research Division video where we test out your questions on the Create Experience server. So we've got a question here from a viewer who asked, could you test out how she works with Lucy, specifically M6 Lucy? The newest update now has Lucy Boars properly inheriting her anomaly stats, so that could be worth testing which Lucy build works best with Burnice. So I think this is a really good question and I'm keen to know myself because Lucy is one of my favorite characters who I've already invested into. She's definitely going to be running on my Burnice team and many of you are probably thinking the same, but here's the issue. Burnice gets the bulk of her damage from burns and anomaly, but Lucy also applies burn and anomaly. With how anomaly build-up works, Lucy would then therefore dilute the fire anomaly pool with her weak anomaly proficiency attacks, which could theoretically negatively impact Burnice's overall damage output. So that crazy interaction with M6 Lucy where we summon down the Bullpocalypse with Burnice's flamethrowers could come back to bite us. So let's see if we can get an answer to that. I want to see how much damage we do off of burns and disorders with a typical crit Lucy versus a Lucy tailored around anomaly proficiency. I think this is really important, especially this early on into the game where having to re-gear another character from scratch is such a massive hit with how lacking we are on resources right now. So let's see if the loss in damage, if any, is big enough to warrant looking into farming for a whole new set for Lucy. So anyway, let's start by taking a look at our two test subjects. So on the left, we've got our crit Lucy. She's probably your typical Lucy that you would find on live servers right now, and I do have her running the 4-piece Protopunk set though, since it's just a better set for her and more consistent in terms of buff uptime. Although if you are running her with a Caesar, you would have her on the Swing Jads instead. On our right hand side, we've got our Anomaly Lucy. I instead have her rocking a 2-piece Anomaly set for the 2-piece bonus. You could technically go with a 2-2-2 mix set with 2 Anomaly 2-piece bonuses if you really wanted to max it out, but I think that having the 4-piece bonus is just more realistic and just overall better. So with our stats, our crit Lucy is rocking 2482 attack, which is just enough to hit her buff breakpoints, along with 60 crit rate and 102 crit damage. Our anomaly proficiency though is sitting at a measly 102. On the right hand side, we've got the same loadout in terms of the 4-piece Protopunk, but instead I opt for a 2-piece bonus of anomaly proficiency. So this has our Lucy sitting on 2616 attack, just 17 crit rate and 88% crit damage. But our anomaly proficiency is at a whopping 332, so she's looking almost like an anomaly character, even without an anomaly weapon, which is quite impressive. So for the first test, I just wanted to try something pretty simple. It's going to be a fairly common occurrence in which you use Lucy to do a charged EX special in order to get the buff. And then I jump over to Burnice and I do her full combo, which also triggers an additional 3 balls from Lucy's M6, and then that gets us to the burn. I wanted to see how Lucy's contribution in that combo affects the burn damage across our 2 Lucy loadouts. So on screen right now, we can see the burn damage that we get using our crit Lucy, and that's 8524. And now we just want to do the exact same thing using our AP Lucy, so that's a charged EX skill and then Burnice's combo, and that gets us 9467. So that's just a little bit over a 10% difference. So our next test is a lot more difficult. I wanted to see how using different Lucys would affect disorder damage in a Jane Doe comp, and whether or not we would be able to spot a noticeable difference. And this is really challenging due to how disorder works, so I wanted to explain my approach. Disorder damage is really chaotic, and while people like to post damage per screenshots for disorders, that doesn't tell the full picture. You get massive numbers by applying burn and then blowing it up with assault, and the number drops if you let the ticks burn away. But it's not like you lost that damage, the tick still went off. In a clinical setting, trying to line up 2 disorder procs side by side involves having to ensure that you're getting the exact same amount of ticks, and making sure that everyone has the same buff stacks at the time that we're applying both anomalies, and that's nearly impossible. And while you could technically maths it out, I like to see how things play out in real world situations. So the approach that I took with this was to use a Burnice, Lucy and Jane team and do a 6 to 8 minute fight in the VR room. I turned off all stuns for more consistency, and then I turned off infinite energy as well, and this is important because Lucy's M6 triggers off of EX usage, and it's not realistic for me to be spamming 100 Jane Doe EX specials, causing 100 balls to be raining down from the sky. So in this 6 to 8 minute fight, I played as normally as I could, doing regular rotations that I would do if I was simply playing the game. And then I recorded every single disorder proc that occurred, whether it was from a burn on assault or assault on burn. I got about 35 procs with each Lucy team, totaling about 70 data points, and then I placed those points into a scatter graph with the goal of seeing if there are any clear indications that one Lucy was outperforming the other, and here are the results. So, what can we say from these results? As expected, there's a huge range in disorder damage on both Lucys, and this is just from burn wiping flinch creating small numbers compared to flinch wiping burn. The disorder procs are in order, and we can see it go from low to high to low to high, which makes sense since we're alternating between burn and flinch triggering disorder. We can see the variance in the low end being more consistent, which also makes sense because burn wiping flinch is more consistent since we don't need to factor in dot ticks being lost. And then on the other end, the mid and high range has massive fluctuations since sometimes we pop a fresh burn and sometimes we pop a burn that's been ticking for a while. Anyway, this already tells us what we know about disorder. But what about AP Lucy versus Crit Lucy? Well, the only thing that we can say for sure from this data is that we expected AP Lucy to take out the top end, which she did. And we expected Crit Lucy to do less damage overall on the lower end, which it also did. The middle range just has so much variance that the disorder values there don't really tell us much, and we saw previously on our burn ticks that we're doing about 10% less damage throughout, so what's my take on this? Well, the biggest two questions were, does running AP Lucy affect our damage in a Burnice comp, and was it worth re-gearing my Lucy from scratch to factor for this? So we can definitely say that yes, it does affect our damage that we get from burn and disorders, but you need to also factor in the difference in personal damage from Lucy, who is now no longer running a high crit rate build, and that affects her abilities and her balls. And while I would imagine that the damage that we gain from burn and disorder does outweigh Lucy's personal damage, it's definitely something that we need to take into account. On the side of whether or not it's worth re-gearing Lucy, well, that's a personal question for you. For me though, probably not. I mean, it's going to be something that I will work towards slowly. If I end up finding a nice anomaly piece, I probably will pass it over to Lucy, but I don't think this is a critical change that needs to be made immediately. I'm already clearing Shiyu 7 with ease, so re-gearing my Lucy isn't really going to change that. So I'll probably just be saving my material for the next character instead.